Welcome to the Female Founder Unplugged podcast, a show for women entrepreneurs who want to build, grow, and lead successful businesses and high-performing teams. I'm your host, Lindsay White, leadership coach and people strategy expert, here to bring you unplugged conversations with a variety of amazing guests who share expert advice and real actionable people strategies for your growing business. Ready to get unplugged? Let's jump in. Hey everyone, it's another episode of the Female Founder Unplugged podcast with me, your host, Lindsay White. And it's another solo episode with me today. What I wanted to chat with you about is this concept of work-life blend. So if you have been in my universe for any time at all, you know that I believe that work-life balance is bullshit. That's right. I said it out loud. It's totally controversial, but I believe it to be true. I think that this idea of work-life balance is actually the problem. I think it's the thing that keeps us overwhelmed, frustrated, burnt out, sad, anxious, depressed, on and on and on. Because the idea that everything in our life has to be balanced is absolutely untrue, and it's actually unachievable. Think about your life as a beautiful blueberry pie. The reality is not every slice of that beautiful blueberry life pie is going to be the same all the time, especially for those of us that are female founders and small business owners, because our business is a huge part of our life. We've put our blood, sweat, and tears into this damn thing, and we have so much of ourselves invested in making it successful. And for many of the women I work with, not only is it the thing we do, it is the thing we love to do. It's our profession, it's our calling. It's something that we feel very compelled to do. We're very passionate about, right? I certainly am, as someone who is a leadership coach and a people strategy expert that works with female entrepreneurs to help them build and grow and then ultimately lead really high performing teams that accelerate their business growth. I am super passionate about doing that work. I can't imagine what my life would be like if I didn't get to do this work. I would be miserable. I'll be perfectly honest. This is the stuff that jazzes me up. Like nothing else in the world is working with a female entrepreneur that wants to be a better leader, wants to grow a beautiful team, and ultimately wants to grow a really fabulous business that impacts her community, that makes a difference. I got to tell you, that's what gets me up out of bed in the morning. And so, but I think what happens is we also, of course, have a life, and we want to have a life. And for many of us, we get into these businesses because we want to have a better life. Certainly, we want to make money. I mean, I think that's really important. And I don't think there's anything to be ashamed saying out loud, right? We all want to make more money, but we also want to do that in a way that honors our values. We talk about that in a different episode, but it really allows us to give great time and space to the things we care about the most. We want flexibility. We have often families or love interests or other opportunities that we really want to bring some time and attention and presence to, right? So yeah, for many of us, we're moms or we're aunties, or we love to work in the charity space and we want to have the flexibility to do that. Or we love golf and we want to be able to golf on Fridays. Like there's all these different reasons we get into these businesses. For many of us, we've left a corporate environment, right? We've been in a space where we have to work 8 to 4. We only get a few weeks of holidays a year. There's very little flexibility outside of Saturday and Sunday. 5 days a week, we're dedicated to something else. And, we want to be in a space where we can use the time we have in a way that makes sense while still being the professional that we are driven and care to be. And so I think it's really important that we think about our beautiful blueberry pie of life, that all of those slices in there are not the same all at the same time. And I often have said, no sooner do you get into this space of perfect balance that the dog is throwing up on the living room carpet, or the kid's school calls and somebody has broken an arm, or the vendor calls and says the shipment's going to be late, or the client calls and says I can't do this project I need to do it today. Like there's always something. And that's called life. right? These pieces are not abnormal. That is completely the way our worlds work because we have accountabilities and ownership in so many different spaces that actually finding the way to balance all of those is the thing that makes us insane. It makes us crazy. It really does impact our mental health because we never feel like we've got all the balls in the air all at the same time. Or even, the metaphor of like the circus act where they're spinning the plates on the sticks 3 or 4 feet in the air. And you're just waiting for one of those plates to stop spinning and fall off and crash to the ground. Well, that's what this premise of work life balance gives us is that we're trying to keep all those plates spinning. And the reality is that sometimes the plates are bigger, sometimes they need to spin faster, sometimes we need to put plates down or pick plates up. And work-life blend does not, or work-life balance does not allow the space for that. And that's what makes that particular language really difficult and challenging. And I would argue ultimately really dangerous. Because again, I think work-life balance actually is the thing that keeps us feeling overwhelmed, frustrated, and burnt out. And I think that ultimately impacts our mental health. I think that's where we get into spaces of really deep anxiety and depression. I think it fuels our saboteur that we're not good enough, that somehow there's someone in the universe that's achieved the perfect work life balance and I haven't. So there must be something wrong with me. We certainly see a great deal of that on social media, right? I look at, scrolling on Instagram in particular, Facebook. Oh, look at all these people that are on vacation and their children are all dressed and perfect and everybody's smiling and laughing and they're always jet setting around and oh, they drive a nice, oh, look at all these things they do. They must have like perfect work-life balance. The truth is, it isn't true. It's just photographs, it's social media, and like 99.9% of it is total bullshit, right? It is not reality. But our brains take that in and we struggle to disseminate, right? To really understand and deeply integrate that that's not true. Our brain automatically goes to something must be deficient with me. And so, this idea of work life balance, we truthfully need to throw it away. It needs to go out with the trash. It's garbage. What we need to think about is work life blend. How do we integrate our work and our life together in a way that is deeply meaningful for ourselves, for nobody else, that makes sense for our current context, for where we are in our life and our business? And how does that blend honor our values, which are the things that matter most to us in our life? How do they honor our goals and the things we want to achieve, our dreams? How do they honor the most important relationships that we have? And especially the one with ourselves, because that's the one that often takes the back burner. And how do we leverage a work life blend so that we can ebb and flow with the needs that are constantly changing and evolving? That's what I think is really key. So let me give you an example. So I think about, certainly at moments in time, particularly this summer, when we have children off school, and for so many of us, we are mothers, right? We, just by the nature of that role, we carry a heavier burden when it comes to some of the emotional load. We often are the ones that end up doing a lot of the caregiving and nurturing. It's just that simple. Times are changing. Let me be clear, dads are being a whole lot more present, or partners. It's not exclusive binary relationships, right? For many of us, we have same-sex partners. And the idea that we're sharing more of the workload is definitely the thing that is happening. But in all reality, a lot of the times, especially when we have home-based offices, we end up carrying a lot of the responsibility for having kids at home in the summer. And so how do we flex our work life so that we can accommodate more need for ourselves in our personal or home life? That's just one example of it. How do we, make sure that we are active in our business? Because we can't just shut down for 2 months because there's kids are off school, right? So, lots of people put their kids in really valuable day camps. And then, maybe we flex in the morning and the afternoon. Maybe the camp doesn't start till 9 o'clock. I got a colleague that's doing that. She has to drop her kids off at 9. So she's not taking appointments in the summer much before 10 o'clock. And then she's got to go pick them up at 3:30. So she needs to be done at 3. And so her days look different. When we have work-life blend, we can create that integration that's the most valuable for us. We can ebb and flow in a way that works and makes sense for all the pies, all the pieces of the pie, for all those plates that we're trying to twirl in the air. I think about different seasons, right? So if you have a business that is in a product, certainly anything after the American Thanksgiving holiday becomes incredibly busy, but it's also a busy time for social activities. So, how do we blend those things together to make sure that we get the work delivered? Because we may have a ton of incoming orders that need to be supervised and then go out to clients because people are ordering stuff for Christmas, their presents. We want to make sure that they get there, before the 19th or 20th of December so that people have a Merry Christmas. But we also have parties and recitals and all sorts of things, socials and cocktails and, family events, all sorts of things that we need to get done. And so, again, we need to be able to ebb and flow. And in this space of work life blend, we can integrate, we can figure out what makes sense. So, for example, I don't normally work a lot on weekends because for me, that's family time and that honors my family value. But maybe there are times during those kinds of seasons where it's okay to flex into a Sunday because actually Sunday's the day when there aren't a lot of activities. And maybe the boundary is I'm only going to work 2 hours. I'm going to work 2 hours on Sunday afternoon because actually that's important. Maybe we actually allow others to help us. That can be part of our blend, right? So, ordering things online, having it shipped to the house, hiring an Instacart shopper, all of those things allow us to have a work and life blend. And if we think about it from a balance perspective, I'd have to give equal thought and equal time and equal capacity to all of those things. Well, it's just not functional. What inevitably ends up happening is I'm the one that sacrifices, right? And as business owners, it again leaves us burnt out and stressed out and overwhelmed. And that's not what our business needs to run effectively. So I think it's actually really critical that we embrace this idea of having a work life blend, most importantly for our own mental health. And here's the idea is that when we feel like we have our values very clearly articulated so that we know what's most important to us, we define the boundary, how we're going to protect that value, how we're going to honor that value, then we can have a work life blend that feels deeply meaningful, really fulfilling. It's joyful because we are happy, whether we're at work or we're involved in something in our life. We can feel really good about being there. We're not always worried that we should be somewhere else because those shoulds are the things that can really trip us up. But when we have this idea of work life blend, that we're going to integrate the two things together as opposed to try and make them all separate and equal, then we can feel really satisfied. We can make really intentional decisions about where our presence needs to be allocated. We can actually have the flexibility that we really wanted. That's, I think, probably the most astonishing part about work-life balance is it takes all the flexibility out of it. But when we think about it in terms of work-life blend, that's where we can have flexibility back. We can ebb and flow. And the truth is, when we can feel really satisfied in the way we honor our values, we honor our own purpose and our own mission, as well as the purpose and mission and vision in our business, that's when we can feel truly satisfied. That's when we can feel really empowered. That's where a space where we can lead really effectively. Because make no mistake, we need to show up as a great leader in our personal life as well as in our business. And where we can really guard our mental health. The other part I would add to this work life blend piece is that ultimately it allows a greater space for ourselves. right? Because in that balance piece, so often the piece of the pie that gets cut into the finest wedge is the piece for ourself. And we sacrifice. We sacrifice a great deal. We sacrifice it in our business because, again, we're so passionate about what we do. We also sacrifice it in our personal life. And we are left with precious little for ourselves. When we truly embrace the idea that there is the ability to blend, that there is the ability to flex, that there is the ability to ebb and flow, there's a lot more space in there for ourselves. There's a lot more control in there for the way we want to show up. There's a lot more opportunity for us to feel really powerful and really deeply satisfied with how we are conducting our entire world. So, one of the things that is absolutely crucial in creating a work life blend for yourself is thinking deeply about what are all the roles? What are all the things that I have accountability for? And just making yourself a list. And I have a workbook for you. So you can download, we'll put it in the show notes. So you can download it and you can follow along. But like, what are all the roles that I have? What are the values that are most important to me? What are the things I care about the most? How do I live those values? What are the things that I do that make those values real? We also want to think about what's our purpose? What am I even doing here? Why am I on this planet? Right? And that actually is really crucial to understand because if we know what we care about most and we know what we're trying to create in our world, then we can really frame what is the blend that's going to work for me. We need to think about what is the lifestyle that I want to create, right? What are the things that are going to make a difference for me and how I want to show up? I think it's also important that we think about how do I want to lead? What does that look like? And we think about leadership in a business context, but in fact, it's leadership of our own life. Leadership starts from the inside. So really thinking about, how do I want to show up in the world? For me, it's about being authentic. It's about being my true high voltage self. Well, I can't do that if I'm feeling overextended and overwhelmed. I also can't do that if I don't get 8 hours of sleep. So, how does that fit into my blend? Right. So, I think it's how, all of these things and really thinking through why. Why are these important to me? Why is it important that I show up as my high voltage self? Well, because that honors my value of authenticity. And I always endeavor to show up as my true self and my whole self and be exactly who I am meant to be. So I think when we consider all of those steps in terms of what is our work life blend, and then we have some vision, right? If I could really create what I wanted, what would that look like? What would that sound like? What would that feel like? How would I feel? So, for example, for me, it's about having some space in the morning. I've recognized that I can't just jump out of bed, jump online and start coaching people. That doesn't work for me. The truth is, I'm really not very effective. So I don't feel like I'm doing a good job. It's not fulfilling because I don't feel like I'm doing my best work. So, what do I need to do in order to make my mornings work? I'm also not one of those people who wants to get up at 5 in the morning and journal and meditate for an hour. That doesn't work for me either. I need to ease into the day. So, part of my work life blend is actually creating space in the morning so that I have a ritual that works for me, so that I can ease into my day. And then I needed to think about, okay, what is the right pace for me to work? What makes sense for me daily and weekly and even monthly and quarterly? So, for example, my work life blend this summer includes me booking Fridays off. I don't take clients on Friday unless it's something really critical. And then I get to choose. It's not that someone went in and booked it in my calendar, it's my choice, right? Because I knew that this summer my blend needed to include more time, more space, and more connection. And that's what I'm using Fridays for. I'm using Fridays as a flex so that I can create time and space for myself that I can create more opportunities for connection with others, and that I can feel like I'm actually working really well in the 4 days. And then I can feel really good about my blend going into the weekend, where I get to spend time with my family and my friends and do some things that really light me up and really spark my creativity. So that's what I'm talking about when I talk work life blend. It also, most importantly, gives us the space of empathy for ourselves. Work life balance is completely unforgiving because if it's not equal, it's not good enough. The truth is, it's never equal, it's never perfect. And for so many of us as female founders, it's one of the things we struggle with mightily is that idea of perfection. And again, we see it all the time on social media that it looks perfect. Let me be clear, it's an illusion. No one is perfect. No one is perfect. Absolutely not. And so we need to let go of this space that everything has to be perfectly balanced all the time and recognize that shit happens and that we can give ourselves grace and empathy in those moments, that we have to set one thing down to pick one thing up, or we have to hold both things in our hand at the same time. So I hope that this conversation around work-life blend and how it can really help us, be more effective, but also feel more confident and empowered, and really support our own mental health so that we have space for ourselves, so that we can find pleasure in our work, but also in our personal life and how they fit together and integrate in a way that's deeply meaningful for each and every one of us. Now, if you need some help with that integration, if you are thinking, as I'm talking about, I don't even really know what I value anymore. I don't know how to create a work life blend that's meaningful for me because I don't even know how to define what's meaningful. Then the great news is I have space in my calendar for us to work together. There's absolutely an opportunity to come and check in with me. And all you need to do is send me a DM, send me a note, and let me know that you've listened to this episode and that you are really interested in redefining your work life blend. I would absolutely love to connect with you, and you're absolutely welcome to download the worksheet and get started on what your work life blend looks like. Ask yourself some big, beautiful questions, do some reflection, and then by all means, send me a DM and let me know. Happy to book some time with you to have that discussion. Thanks again for joining me on another great episode of Female Founder Unplugged. We would love to hear from you. Please leave us a review. Let us know what you thought about this episode. And if you know someone that is struggling with their work life blend, I would love for you to share this with them. This could be a really powerful question, a really powerful conversation, and absolutely change the way someone really thinks about how they operate in their world. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you next week. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Female Founder Unplugged podcast. I hope you enjoyed listening as much as I did hosting this conversation. I feel so lucky that I get to connect with such amazing female entrepreneurs. And if you enjoyed today's session, would you do me a big favor? Would you hit subscribe and give this episode a 5-star review? I'd also love it if you would share with your friends. We've got a goal here at the Female Founder Unplugged podcast to impact 1,000 female founders. And with your help, we can really amplify the message. Thanks again for being a part of the show. And don't forget to connect with me at highvoltageleadership.ca. We'll see you next week.